Well, Zara, thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. It's great talking to you.
Good to be here.
Was reading, and I apologize, I'm not a regular reader of the Chip Chick blog, but I was reading your recent piece, Gunning for It. Are women with guns fantasy figures or empowered? What made you decide that you wanted to write about this as a British citizen or a British subject?
Well, it really stemmed from a recent trip I had to the States where I shot a gun for the first time on a gun range. And it was really interesting just to see the attitudes of both the people who were on the gun range and from other American citizens that I spoke to. Because people had seemed to have really strong opinions about what they perceived a woman with a gun to be. And from my own perspective, it was something I wanted to look into a little bit further because it's something very alien to somebody in Britain to have the power of shooting a gun. Well, I know that in America, it's the Second Amendment, so people are a lot more familiar with it and more comfortable.
Absolutely right. In fact, I thought it was interesting. You said the first time that you shot a gun, you screamed.
Yes, well, it's just very strange for somebody who's never really held a gun before just to realize you're holding something that can actually destroy a person. Because never considering myself a particularly violent person, to hold something and be aware of the kind of power you've got in your hands is quite a scary thing because it's really important to recognize that guns are not toys.
Absolutely right. And it's interesting. I wonder, Zara, if you live in a culture or society where gun ownership is not normal, where it is so restricted as it is in Great Britain, if you don't sort of develop this fantasy of what gun ownership is all about, because you're never around, somebody who is a real gun owner.
Yeah, I mean, even in America, I think this exists to a certain extent
Yeah.
because all you tend to see of guns is you see it on TV. And on TV, it's generally glamorous. When you shoot a gun, you don't get a recoil. I mean, we do have some shows now like CSI where it's a little bit more realistic, but generally people, are jumping, they're somersaulting. You've got James Bond running around, chucking his gun into his boxes, and this isn't really how it is. So you get this preconceived notion that using a gun is somehow really easy and simple without realizing that there's actually a skill to it and you have to have care and you have to have responsibility and just try to actually grasp the fact that somebody can use a gun and they can use it safely in everyday life is quite an alien concept.
And that is so sad to hear you say that because it shouldn't be. And as you say, it was empowering for you to go to the range, wasn't it?
Oh, I really enjoyed it. Like, there's something about the feel of a metal, and it does make you feel stronger. It doesn't make me feel like I want to go out and go on the rampage.
Right.
But I do feel like, yeah, it did make me feel like, okay, I feel more powerful. I feel more protected. I don't necessarily know if I'd go out and buy a gun if I was going to live in the States, but I feel that having the extra skill is seeing it in that way. It's a skill and you can learn it. You just have to realize that it's a dangerous sport and you need to take precautions.
So I'm wondering, Zara, and by the way, you talk about the danger of the sport here in the United States. Actually, in terms of injuries, this is one of the safest sports out there. Far fewer injuries from shooting sports than cheerleading or football or a lot of the big sports out there. Now, I'm kind of curious, what was the reaction to your piece at Chip Chick?
It's been quite varied, actually. We've had a lot of commenters say that they really agree with people owning guns, and it makes them feel safe to know that they have one and that people in their family own a gun and that they can go out and protect themselves. And then I've also had a lot of people say that before I read your piece, my idea of guns is that you see it on television and it's something that isn't really real or relates to me. And this is from American citizens who live in California and live in New York and all over the world. And they're just like, we didn't really ever think that a gun would really relate to our lives because it's something that people see on the news or they see statistics of mobs or, terrible things happening with gangs. And now they're starting to realize that it's something that they could use if should they want to. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that they're going to go out and hurt somebody. It's more an idea of making themselves more familiar with something that they weren't really aware that could apply to them.
So do you see, Zara, I guess, it sounds like what you're describing is the realization that you don't actually have to be afraid of the unknown. You can actually go out and learn about this and remove a lot of the fear.
Yes, I think using a gun and writing about it and speaking to different women and their experiences has made me aware that using a gun doesn't have to be something where you're going to go out on a rampage, and it can be something you can learn to use safely. But it's also aware about just how much strange information there is about it out there, about how people don't really seem to understand what owning a gun or using a gun means, about how we get this stereotype in the media of women with guns were either, I don't know, terrible people who want to go around killing people or as some sexualized objects, and trying to take away both of these different layers. And it's simply about education. I mean, if you're a woman and you own a gun, it's the same as a man. And if you own a gun, and trying to get rid of the stereotype that to be female and to be understand how to use a gun is somehow unnatural.
I think it is fantastic, Zara, that you wrote about this and that you've got this sort of attitude. Next time you're in the States, if you make it to the D.C. area, would love to have you out at the. I'll take you to the NRA range because I think you'd have a fantastic time, and I'd love to go shooting with you.
I would like that, definitely.
Thank you so much, Zara Stone Rabinowitz from the Chip Chick blog, joining us here tonight on Cam and Company.